The spirit who stole my apple date. The orchard was called Whisper Grove, though no signs ever marked its entrance. Just a crooked fence, half swallowed by ivy, and the sound of wind that never quite touched your skin. He didn't come there often, just once a year, when the leaves turned copper and the apples took on a blush so deep they looked embarrassed to be picked. But today was different. Today, he was meeting someone. She'd said it half-jokingly. "Let's go apple picking, somewhere quiet." Her voice had that kind of softness you only notice once it's gone. He arrived early, carrying 2 thermoses, her favorite kind of cider, and one for himself. The orchard seemed quieter than he remembered. Every tree stood too still, and the light filtering through the branches felt dimmer, like clouds that didn't exist had gathered. At the 3rd row of trees, he saw her. She wasn't standing, just resting against a trunk as if waiting didn't bother her. Her coat was the color of dried marigold, and her eyes flickered like candlelight. "You came," she said without surprise. "I brought cider," he replied, feeling suddenly silly. They picked apples for a while in silence. Each one they touched seemed to hum faintly, not audibly, but in that place where feelings live just below hearing. She smiled sometimes. He laughed once. It almost felt like a date. When they sat beneath the biggest tree, he finally asked the question. "You're not just someone who wanted apples, are you?" She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and looked up through the leaves. "You came here hoping for sweetness," she said. "But every fruit has a root, and this orchard remembers who planted it." He didn't know what she meant, but the air thickened. "I didn't know the orchard had a guardian," he said. Her smile was soft. "I didn't know you'd return." The cider grew cold in his hand. The wind stirred, not through the trees, but inside them. A whisper, like leaves telling secrets in a language older than storms. He leaned forward, a breath away. Was this real? She looked at him with something more ancient than sorrow and whispered, "Every bite changes something, and I already paid." Then she stood, kissed his forehead, and walked between the trees. Her footsteps didn't crunch. Her shadow didn't stay. He stayed until dusk. The apples on his lap glowed faintly, warm with something he couldn't name. When he left Whisper Grove, he carried a smile that wasn't his, and a memory that would never fully belong to him. And each autumn after, when the leaves fell and the orchard waited, he returned. Not for apples, not for cider. But just in case she did too. He came back next year. He came back to Whisper Grove when the first chill kissed the wind. Same path, same crooked fence, still no sign at the gate. Only the apples had changed. They wore their blush softer this year, like they were shy to be picked. He didn't bring cider this time. The trees knew him. Or maybe they remembered the way he lingered last October, beneath the tree she leaned against, waiting. The wind curled tighter around his coat, like arms that once held him. He whispered her name, just once. And something stirred. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. More like a memory rustling through the orchard, a trace of perfume, a warmth without source, the ghost of footsteps. Whatever it was, it lingered sweetly in the air. Not sorrow, not longing, just something that had been shared once and wasn't quite finished. The kind of sweetness that stays after the fruit is gone. He walked the rows, slow and reverent. At the end of the 3rd aisle, an apple lay on the ground. Perfect, untouched, blushing deeply. He picked it up, hesitated, then smiled. Maybe she hadn't left. Maybe the orchard had never been empty. And maybe the echo of their moment was still ripening, 1 year at a time. He came back next year, closing. He stood among the trees as dusk crept in. The orchard didn't feel abandoned. It felt inhabited, infused with warmth that didn't belong to the dying sun. Leaves swirled around his boots like a welcome he hadn't earned. And as the sky faded to violet and the air began to hum with stars, he realized, she never really left. She just became the season. Chapter 2, Winter's Bride. The town was small, cradled by hills that held snow like secrets. Each winter, the train station stood silent, its clock still ticking despite no trains arriving for years. He wrote her letters every December. Always the same, soft ink, the scent of pine, lines wrapped in longing. No reply ever came, but he kept writing. Locals said a bride waited by the tracks, hair silver as frost, veil stitched with silence. They saw her once, maybe twice, always standing in moonlight, watching a train that never came. He returned to the station after years away, drawn by the ache he thought had thawed. But the snow knew him. It fell slower around his boots. The cold, instead of biting, welcomed. Chapter 3. Spring's Lie. He returned when the blossoms painted the orchard in pink and white, expecting rebirth. What he found was familiarity twisted. A woman standing in the garden, smiling like they'd always shared this ritual. But the stories she told weren't his. She laughed at memories he never lived and offered apologies for wounds he never felt. The orchard bloomed, but something was wrong. The petals fell too quickly. The air smelled of sweetness just past expiration. "You said you'd come back," she whispered, offering him a letter he didn't remember writing. "And you did, just not the version I loved." He walked through moments that felt like dreams borrowed from someone else. And beneath every flower bed, secrets stirred. Spring, he realized, didn't promise truth. It only promised newness. And sometimes, new comes dressed as a memory in disguise. Absolutely, Roger. Let's let the frost linger a little longer so the story of Spring's Lie can thaw with feeling. I'll stretch the arc gently. More dew, more memory, more subtle unraveling. Chapter 3. Spring's Lie Extended. He came back when the blossoms bloomed, soft pinks, whites, and lilacs tumbling from branches like confetti for a party he didn't remember accepting. Whisper Grove felt different now. Brighter, warmer, but not cleaner. The snow had melted, yes, but in its place grew petals too perfect and silence too rehearsed. She was waiting in the garden again. This time, her dress flowed like morning fog over damp soil. She smiled as if nothing had passed between them. "You always visit me in spring," she said, brushing a fallen bloom from his shoulder. "Even after winter kept us apart." He nodded slowly, unsure if he was living a memory or watching one be performed for him. She led him down paths freshly overgrown. Everywhere they went, signs of rebirth gleamed, but none of it felt earned. The roots had not struggled, and the flowers seemed to bloom without effort. He touched a tulip and felt nothing beneath its skin. Later, beneath an arch of wisteria, she handed him a folded letter. "It's yours," she said, "from the spring before this one." But he had never written it. Inside were lines written in his hand, words he believed but didn't recall crafting. Apologies, promises, a confession of love he didn't know he'd spoken aloud. He looked up. Her smile faltered for the first time. "You forgot," she whispered. "Or someone else remembered for you." The orchard breeze carried the scent of regret sweetened by cherry blossoms. The warmth felt more like illusion now, a balm over something bruised. She took his hand. "Spring lies sometimes, you know. It tells you things are new, but all it really does is repaint old truth." He tried to speak, but the wind lifted her voice above his. "But I don't mind the lie. I loved you then. I love you in this version too." As sunset spilled across the garden, he felt the weight of 100 possible springs, some where they met as strangers, some where they never spoke, and some where she vanished before the snow melted. That night he saw her. She stood where the tracks vanished into white, her gown almost glowing, untouched by wind. "You came back," she said, not like an accusation, more like a memory. "I never stopped," he replied, unsure if she was real or just the shape his devotion had carved in the cold. She walked beside him without footprints. Her hand brushed his coat without touch, and the world felt paused, held in a hush too deep for words. "I waited for the train," she said, "but it was never time, so I waited for you." They sat on the bench as stars unfolded above, and the snow whispered stories from years that never passed. At dawn, the station was empty again. No footsteps, no veil. Just a single letter on the bench addressed to him. The ink shimmered faintly. The words were few. "Love isn't something you wait for. It's something that waits with you." And from then on, each winter, the town claimed the frost came heavier near the station. As if a bride still stood there, wrapped in hope, watching the tracks, wearing devotion like a vow no time could break. Chapter 4. Summer's Ashes. The orchard in summer was wild, branches heavy, fruit overripe, vines curling like untamed thoughts. He returned not to pick, but to find answers. The other seasons had given him pieces. Summer promised something whole, but bitter. Whisper Grove didn't whisper anymore. It roared with cicadas, and the hum of secrets fermenting in the sun. He found the bench from winter buried in weeds, the petals from spring faded and crisped in the heat, and the apple tree where she once wore autumn's crown? Bark stripped, shadow hollowed. Yet he felt her. Not the girl, not the bride, not the storyteller. All of them, all at once. You saw me in seasons, her voice said, but I was never separate. He turned, and flames kissed the horizon. Not fire exactly, just light so warm it scorched truth into shape. And there she stood. Her eyes were every memory, her dress shimmered like past decisions, and her hand held the letter from winter, rewritten. You loved me in pieces, but now, you choose the whole. He stepped forward. The orchard trembled, blossoms withering as roots began to hum. Behind her, 4 paths unfolded, leaf, snow, flower, flame, but only one would stay. He chose summer, not for comfort, for clarity. The sun dipped, the fruit cracked open, and as ash scattered across the garden, the truth bloomed. She was never the visitor. She was the orchard. And everything he touched had been hers all along.